In Pokemon, what is the best dual type combination defensively? What is the best steel type combination defensively? I created an algorithm to numerically score every steel type combination. In this video, we'll be exploring how competitively viable each of these combinations are. Here's how it works. Resistances are worth 1 point and immunities are worth 2. Quad resistances are also worth 2. Weaknesses, however, are worth -1. That's it. You might think this is a surprisingly simple way to judge the type combinations defensively, but don't judge it just yet until you see the results. Before getting into the nitty-gritty, let's discuss steel in general. With this algorithm, the worst steel type combination ranks above 75% of all other type combinations in the game. In fact, there are only 3 dual type combinations in the entire game with a better defensive score than the worst steel type combination. That's how absurdly strong steel is defensively, but you probably already knew this. Now, before you go adding 6 steel types to your competitive team, it's important to note that team building isn't just choosing the best Pokemon mathematically. Once you start factoring in type redundancy, move pool, stats, abilities, and general viability, those low-rank steel combinations are not always usable in practice. Let's get into it. Kicking off our list at number 18 is the Steel Ice typing, and unfortunately it sits at the very bottom of the list with 6 points. This typing suffers from 2 devastating 4x weaknesses, fire and fighting, alongside a 2x weakness to ground. Those are the 3 most common offensive types in the game and compounds the base steel type's weaknesses. When choosing type combinations, it's often extremely beneficial to choose combinations that complement each other. Unfortunately, ice and steel only compound their weaknesses. Along with 3 other steel type combinations, it shares the fewest total resistances, but unlike those 3, ice offers little defensive synergy. Take Alolan Sandslash, for example, currently the only competitively viable steel ice type not including its pre-evolution Alolan Sandshrew. It has great defense on paper, but low HP and low speed outside of hail or snow in Gen 9 ensure it rarely survives a strong super effective hit. For this typing to succeed, it would need exceptional support from its stats, its move pool, or its ability. In short, Steel Ice looks cool, pun intended, but in battle it melts under pressure. Coming in at number 17 is the Steel Rock typing, a combo that, much like Steel Ice, doesn't hold up well under pressure. On paper, it offers 9 resistances, which isn't terrible, but that comes with the same serious price in the form of 2 brutal 4x weaknesses, fighting and ground. Plus, it also has a 2x weakness to water. In a metagame where Earthquake and Close Combat are everywhere, this typing is constantly given to slow, bulky units that just don't have the typing or stats to survive these hits. The one small mercy, unlike Steel Ice, it isn't weak to fire. But that's about the only defensive benefit Rock brings to the table. Rock's poison resistance is useless, as Steel is already immune, and the normal flying attacks are also already resisted by Steel. As for the Pokemon with this typing, they all follow a familiar blueprint. Slow, bulky attackers. First of the 4 Steel Rock Pokemon, Bastiodon has a niche as a body press user with Iron Defense and Terra Fighting. Unfortunately, due to its abysmal move pool and lack of offensive pressure, this Pokemon just doesn't end up doing much. Aggron, on the other hand, can dish out at least some damage. It also has an insanely cool design, but it lacks any tools to help it consistently take damage. Third, we have Probopass, a bulky support, but it's missing the support moves. This Pokemon runs into the same problems as Bastiodon mentioned earlier. It mostly just sits there to look pretty. And finally, Stakataka. Now this one's kind of interesting. It really leans into stat min-maxing. It has off-the-charts defense, which help it live fighting and ground moves, which are very commonly physical, and its speed actually allows it to attack first almost all the time if it's under Trick Room, which it also can set up. Its ability Beast Boost allows it to increase its defense stat too, making it even more unkillable the longer it stays on. This is by far the best Steel Rock type. Next up on our list at number 16, we've got Steel Psychic. Steel Psychic is a well-balanced type combination that's a noticeable step up from our previous entries. It has no 4x weaknesses and only 4 2x weaknesses, Ground, Ghost, Fire, and Dark. This typing is remarkably manageable. Most importantly, it drops Steel's usual weakness to fighting, which is a huge win since close combat runs rampant across every format. In many ways, Steel Psychic plays like a slightly tweaked pure Steel type. It retains most of its impressive resistances while gaining some useful Psychic type coverage. Prior to Steel losing its resistances to Dark and Ghost, this typing was even better. However, in a post-Steel nerf world, this typing success hinges more on the Pokemon wielding it than the typing itself. On its own, it's solid, but it's not going to carry a bad Pokemon to greatness. And in this case, there's no shortage of strong candidates. Metagross, the flagship Steel Psychic Pokemon, is bulky, powerful, and incredibly versatile, with a long track record of success in both singles and doubles formats. Its Mega Evolution is also a monster. It transforms Metagross into one of the most dominant forces in Gen 6 and 7 metas. I'm also looking forward to see this back in Gen 10, hopefully. We also have the Steel Psychic Pokemon Jirachi, a mythical Pokemon with solid stats across the board, with stats all 100. In singles, it's infamous for its annoying flinch strategies with Serene Grace, Iron Head, and Thunder Wave. Also having Wish and Protect allow it to survive lengthy encounters and keep its team healthy. After Jirachi, we have Bronzong, a defensive specialist that used to shine even brighter before the Steel nerf. Thanks to its abilities Levitate or Heatproof, it could effectively negate one of its two main weaknesses depending on the matchup and what your team needed. In earlier generations, it was a nightmare to take down. Speaking of nightmares, we also have Necrozma Duskmane and Solgaleo, which I definitely thought was Solgaleo until I made this video. These legendary powerhouses bring a balanced blend of offense and bulk. They are excellent users of the weakness policy item, and in Gen 8, running weakness policy with the Dynamax doubling of HP made these things insanely difficult to deal with. Lastly, for Steel Psychics, we have Iron Crown. One of the newer entries to this typing, Iron Crown brings offensive pressure and speed to a group traditionally known for bulk. Unfortunately, the fact that all of these mentioned Pokemon are Steel Psychic means that they have a Dark-type weakness, so it becomes incredibly difficult for them to switch into Dark-type attacks. Not surprisingly, at number 15, we have the pure Steel typing, the foundation from which all other Steel combinations are judged. With 3 weaknesses, Fighting, Ground, and Fire, 10 resistances, and 1 immunity to poison, this typing is inherently solid. The type itself is often used on a Pokemon that is a defensive backbone to any team. Unfortunately, most teams also bring a Steel counter, and because pure Steel doesn't shake up its weaknesses, Steel types are often left out in favor of another combination that patches at least one of their major 3 weaknesses. There's nothing inherently wrong with the typing, but without a secondary type to shake things up, it can feel easy to play around. There are also the most Pokemon in this solo type. Just 2 tiers above regular Aggron, we have Mega Aggron. Dropping the rock typing from regular Aggron and adding the filter ability makes it so this behemoth of a Pokemon is incredibly difficult to take down. It's everything you want in a tank, except the fact it doesn't have reliable recovery. Registeel is another defensive staple. It has great all-around bulk, access to status moves like Thunder Wave and Toxic, and reliable support tools like Stealth Rock or even Iron Defense Body Press strategies. Registeel has been a long-time favorite in stall and balance teams. On the other hand, Melmetal bashes its opponents with 2 massive Iron Bar fists. It's incredibly bulky, and packing the exclusive Double Iron Bash, it carves a niche as both a wall and a powerful attacker. Next we have Copperajah, who has a high base HP stat of 122. However, its sluggish speed stat, and it lacks real defensive utility with both defensive stats clocking in at 69. It can fall pretty quickly to any decently strong attacker. Finally, of the Steel types worth mentioning on this defensive list, we have Orthworm. Now this one's weird, in a good way. Orthworm leans into its defensive typing with its unique Earth Eater ability that lets it absorb ground moves entirely, giving it only 2 total weaknesses and the additional immunity. With its incredibly high defense stat of 145, this Earthworm can be incredibly difficult to take down by any physical attacker. If it can safely remain on the field, it can set up a Shed Tail for a more frail attacker to come in for free. Unfortunately, it's often held back by low HP and a low special defense. Overall, though, a pure steel type is dependable, but it lacks the versatility and surprise factor that some dual types bring. It's the baseline for a reason. At number 14, we've got Steel Dark, a typing that may look better than its defensive score leads it to seem. The main reasoning for its placement down this far is its massive 4x weakness to fighting. Steel Dark retains Steel's traditional resistances and gains an immunity to Psychic, but Steel already resists Psychic, so that added immunity doesn't bring much to the table defensively. And without bolstering its weaknesses with a removal of one of Steel's traditional weaknesses, this combo can end up feeling like a strict downgrade to pure Steel in a few situations. Luckily, the only two competitive Pokemon on this list are insanely powerful in other ways. These Pokemon make the most of this typing, compensating for the drawbacks with incredible stat distributions and phenomenal abilities. Bisharp and Kingambit both carve out a niche as slow, bulky attackers with access to powerful priority moves like Sucker Punch, as well as the ability Defiant, and in Kingambit's case, Supreme Overlord. Bisharp also has the lucky ability to wield the Eviolite item, which gives a massive 1.5 boost to both its defense and special defense, skyrocketing its defensive capabilities. With one of the most interesting combinations, we have number 13, Bug Steel. This combination boasts only a singular weakness to fire, just one. But it is a 4x weakness, and being that flammable can set aflame its defensive prowess. But let's not overlook how impressive this combo really is. By pairing Bug with Steel, it removes two of Steel's biggest weaknesses, ground and fighting, and holds on to a ton of resistances, making it one of the most resilient typings in the game under the right circumstances. Now, Fire is a very common offensive type, especially an offensive type that specifically targets Steel, and this does hurt its overall ranking. Still, this typing has led to a number of powerful and versatile Pokemon across formats. For example, Forretress, who's rarely seen in BGC, is a staple in singles. It functions as a reliable entry hazard setter, and decent physical bulk allows it to stay on the field exceedingly long. It also has access to Rapid Spin, Spikes, and Volt Switch to get in and out efficiently. It's not flashy, but it does get the job done, if only it had reliable recovery. Scizor and Mega Scizor are arguably some of the most recognizable Steel types, if not Pokemon in general. Once among the most dominant forces in competitive play, Scizor, boasting a stab U-turn, technician boosted bullet punch, and solid defensive stats, can be quite a threat in the right circumstances. Escavalier, another Bug Steel type, is a hidden gem. It's bulky, it's slow, and it hits like a truck, especially in Trick Room teams. Escavalier fills a unique role as a defensive tank and offensive threat. It also has great defensive abilities in Overcoat, allowing it to prevent Spore Sleep or hail damage in pre-Gen 9 formats. Lastly, for Bug Steel, we also have Genesect, who I'm only mentioning because the defensive typing of Bug Steel allow it to run rampant with its offensive capabilities. Genesect has also been banned from multiple OU formats in singles. By now, you may notice that we've been repeating the same defensive score of 9 for many of these more middling combinations. This is to be expected because many types on their own are worth close to 0 points just due to the nature of weaknesses canceling out resistances. Only select combinations that really benefit one another can break out of this middling zone, whether for good or bad. Now, to follow up on Bug Steel, we have Ground Steel. Defensively, it has 4 2x weaknesses: Fighting, Fire, Water, and Ground. 4 weaknesses might sound concerning, but it also comes with 2 key immunities, Electric and Poison. Add in a quad resistance to Stealth Rock, and you've got a type that can switch in frequently without fear of chip damage. However, maintaining Steel's common weaknesses is definitely a detriment. Now let's take a look at some of the more defensive Pokemon that define this typing. First, we have Steelix. Steelix is a physical wall through and through with a sky-high defense stat at 200. It also has solid utility options like Stealth Rocks, Roar, and Toxic. Unfortunately, Steelix and Mega Steelix suffer the same fates as many other previously mentioned Steel types in that they are lacking just reliable recovery. Next up, we have Excadrill, who's a real powerhouse. Excadrill has great HP, excellent attack, and access to Swords Dance and Rapid Spin. The steel typing benefits its offensive nature by providing crucial resistances, allowing it to maximize defensive potential with its extremely high HP stat. It also has some offensive abilities like Sand Rush and Mold Breaker, and those combined with Rapid Spin allow it to provide crucial hazard control. In doubles, specifically VGC Gen 8, it was also a menace in the Dynamax format. Being able to boost its defense or special defense with the 2 max moves corresponding with its typing allow it to really be difficult to take down, especially with Dynamax doubling its HP. Finally, worth mentioning, we have Iron Treads, a defensive utility mon with a futuristic flair. It functions well as a rapid spinner and hazard setter, but it's often held back by a lack of recovery and underwhelming offensive output. It has a lot of potential, but it rarely feels like a game changer on its own. Just outside of the top 10, we have Fighting and Steel, which is sitting firmly in the middle of the pack. And honestly, it's the most average steel type combo on the list. It has 3 2x weaknesses, Fighting, Ground, and Fire, meaning it keeps all of Steel's usual weak points. It also loses some of the resistances that make pure steel so durable. However, the Fighting type breathes fresh air into the offensive capabilities of this typing. Definitionally, this is another balanced typing. You still get 10 resistances and notably a quad resistance to rock, which helps against stealth rock, chip, and physical attackers. On top of that, the typing has great synergy with stab body press, one of the most powerful tools in the tanky steel arsenal. Some notable Pokemon carry this type too. Lucario and Mega Lucario are 2 classic examples. Lucario on its own is a glass cannon, fast, hard-hitting, and frail. It can live resisted hits thanks to the steel's many resistances, but it tends to crumble against anything carrying strong stab or super effective priority. Mega Lucario had a brief reign of terror thanks to adaptability, but both versions remain vulnerable defensively. This typing also has Cobalion, a reliable, if unexciting defensive pick. It tanks hits well and is a decent pivot setter with rocks and Volt Switch, but without reliable recovery or really ways to deal damage, it's just not doing much. Now with Zamazenta, specifically the crowned form, this is where the typing really shines. Zamazenta is an absolute wall, with access to body press and iron defense, turning this typing into a terrifying combination of tankiness and threat. It also has access to Wide Guard in VGC formats, which provide one of the single best options to deal with pesky spread move Pokemon like both Calyrex forms and Waterspout Kyogre. Even with its restricted status, it shows what this combo can do when backed by elite stats. Breaking into the top 10, we've got Grass Steel, a type that might not sound exciting at first, but is defensively one of the best combinations in the entire game. It's also the final defensive score of 9. With 10 total resistances, an immunity to poison, and the removal of Steel's ground weakness, Grass Steel only has one major flaw. It's 4 times weakness to fire. But if you can cover that, whether through team support, weather control, or smart switching, this combo becomes exceptionally hard to break. What makes Grass Steel special is that it keeps all of Steel's major resistances while also patching a key hole in its armor. It's one of the few Steel combinations that's built to stall, pivot, and tank reliably, and it has the Pokemon to prove it. Ferrothorn is the poster child of defensive Grass Steel. This thing is an absolute monster in singles. It can set hazards, use Leech Seed, tank hits, and punish contact moves with Iron Barbs and Rocky Helmet. There was also a brief time period in Gen 8 where it found a niche using Body Press Iron Defense to close out VGC games. Steel Grass also has Kartana, which is like the opposite end of the spectrum. Kartana is an offensive menace, one of the most min-max Pokemon in history. With its sky-high, insane attack stat, solid speed, and surprisingly high defense, Kartana hits like a truck and walls physical attackers, but it will fold like paper to any strong special move. At number 9 is one of the most durable and well-balanced steel combinations in the game, Dragon and Steel. This typing is a defensive masterpiece, boasting just 2 2x weaknesses to Fighting and Ground. And critically, it removes Steel's usual fire weakness entirely. Add that to a total of 10 resistances, including an immunity to poison, and removing all of Dragon's traditional weaknesses, including Fairy, it's an insanely good defensive typing. What makes Dragon Steel especially strong is its scaling potential with stat lines, given that it's a dragon type. With enough good bulk, it can live through neutral damage and even live super effective ground and fighting hits. There are 3 notable examples of this type in action. The first is Dialga. The original Dragonsteel legendary, Dialga has been a strong presence in Ubers for years. Statistically, it's extremely solid. However, it's slightly outclassed by newer powerhouses that are a little bit more min-maxed. It still provides strong value as a bulky attacker or utility option. Next up is Hisuian Goodra. This dragon is a defensive powerhouse specifically on the specially defensive side. It has a great typing, but unfortunately it's let down by its middling offensive stats and lack of real recovery. If it had a few more status moves or utility moves, it could be so much better. Finally, we have Duraludon and Arcaludon. These two represent exactly what this typing is capable of. Arcaludon in particular is an ideal wall breaker and tank hybrid with a monstrous physical presence and access to 2 powerful moves like Electroshot and Body Press. Paired with its defensive ability Stamina, Body Press is extremely powerful in the right circumstances. In range support, being able to fire off Electroshots that up its special attack and weakening fire moves makes it an extremely difficult tank to stop. Now at number 8, you might be a little bit surprised about this, and you're not alone. We have Normal Steel at this spot. This typing might seem weird on paper, but it actually has one of the best theoretical defensive profiles in the entire game. So how does adding Normal to Steel make it better? Well, it kind of does, and it kind of doesn't. Unfortunately, this typing keeps all of Steel's traditional weaknesses to Fighting Ground and Fire, and it also turns the fighting weakness into a 4x weakness with Normal's overlap. And it sounds bad, but, well, it is. But here's where it gets interesting. Normal defensively only adds the immunity to Ghost, but with the way scoring is calculated, the additional fighting weakness is only counted as a -1 point, and the Ghost immunity adds 2 points. This effectively places it 1 point higher than pure Steel, which somehow makes it jump nearly 7 spots in this list. In reality, this type is probably like a worse Dark Steel type. However, for the time being, until a Pokemon exists with this typing, it will remain at the number 8 spot in this list, effectively tied with number 9 Dragon Steel. Since there are no Pokemon with this type combination, let's imagine a Normal Steel Blissey clone. Huge bulk, huge recovery, maybe even access to something like Hyper Voice or a little bit of offensive stats. Suddenly you've got a wall that can switch into nearly anything and still hit back. But these hypotheticals can be applied to nearly any Pokemon or combination on this list, so they're not really useful. Anyway, let's move on. Next up we have Poison and Steel, a rare and surprisingly resilient typing that stands tall with our first defensive score of 11, one of the highest period. At a glance, this combo may seem niche, but its benefits are clear. It removes Steel's fighting weakness in exchange for a 4x weakness to ground. However, due to Poison's incredible defensive nature, the multiple quad resistances really add up. This typing is tailor-made for tanky support Pokemon that just don't exist yet. Additionally, if you gave one the ability Levitate, you'd remove that ground vulnerability entirely, making fire its only remaining weakness. That's an absurdly efficient defensive profile. So far, only one Pokemon line has this typing, Revavroom. And while Revavroom looks like it should be a wall or maybe a heavy hitter, its stats are unfortunately middling on both ends. It doesn't have the raw defense to sponge hits, nor the offensive output to punish threats before they can strike. It gets some use in lower singles tiers thanks to support and shift gear sets, but it can't fully capitalize on its exceptional typing. If Game Freak ever gives this typing to a Pokemon with better defensive stats, I believe it would instantly become one of the best tanks in the game. The potential here is enormous, and it wouldn't take much to push a Pokemon with this typing into top 5 territory. Until then, Poison Steel remains a theoretical powerhouse with underwhelming representation. Just outside of the top 5, Electric Steel lands at number 6, and much like the Poison Steel, it brings in another surprising yet effective defensive profile. Let's start with its major drawback. This typing retains all of Steel's original weaknesses, and unfortunately it amplifies the ground weakness into a devastating 4x vulnerability. That's the extent of its issues though. Otherwise, this typing is fantastic. It resists a total of 12 types, and only 6 types can hit it for neutral or super effective damage. That's a whopping 33% of all types. Finally, it boasts 2x resistances, including handy matchups into Flying and Steel. The Pokemon that have it have been good in niche environments. Take Magnezone for example, the best known electric steel type. It's bulky and it hits hard, but it's also very slow and has low HP, meaning it can't tank repeated hits as well as the typing suggests. Togedemaru, on the other hand, is fast, frail, and gimmicky. It has a few tricks like Fake Out, Zing Zap, and Spiky Shield, but it lacks the bulk or power to truly stand out. It's more annoying than threatening. Despite these somewhat underwhelming representatives, Electric Steel as a type is exceptional. Given to the right Pokemon, you could have a true defensive fortress. With Water Steel, we're officially in the top 5. It's not only one of the best Steel-type combinations, but it may be one of the best combinations in the entire game. Most of the typings above this on the list can also make that case. Getting into it, Water Steel has just 3 2x weaknesses: Electric, Fighting, and Ground. All manageable with no quad weaknesses. Defensively, that's about as much as you can ask for. Meanwhile, it enjoys a poison immunity, 8 resistances, and 2 massive quad resistances to Ice and Steel. The removal of Steel's traditional fire weakness is also a huge win defensively. This type combo has the defensive muscle to wall a wide swath of the metagame. As for the Pokemon in this typing, there's really only one, Empoleon. Early on, this Pokemon was a little bit awkward design-wise. It had a very respectable bulk, but it lacked reliable recovery and suffered from odd ability choices like Defiant prior to its buff in Gen 9. However, since its buff in Gen 9, Empoleon has found a niche as a bulky hazard setter, slow pivot, and similar supportive defensive roles in singles. It hasn't unfortunately seen too much play in VGC, however. At the end of the day, Empoleon suffers from being just that, middling, not shining heavily one way or another. Coming in at number 4 is one of the most iconic defensive type combinations in all of Pokemon, Fire and Steel. Let's talk numbers. This combination has a defensive score of 12, tying all of the remaining top 3. It was a difficult decision to keep this out of the top 3, but ultimately this is true only because of its devastating 4x weakness to ground. None of the other top 3s have a 4x weakness. It resists 10 types, and a whopping 5 of those resistances are quad resistances. That's honestly absurd. That said, this type combination still feels tailor-made for tanky offensive Pokemon. It eats hits for breakfast and can deal heavy damage back, especially to other steel types that could otherwise normally wall each other out. This is yet another type combination with only one Pokemon in it. Let's talk about Heatran. Heatran's presence in competitive play has been near constant since its debut, thanks to its stellar stat spread, diverse move pool, and natural synergy with its type. Flash Fire also defensively adds another incredibly important immunity for this steel typing. If any Pokemon in the future with this type combination get the ability Magnet Pull, they'll be able to trap other steel types and take them down with the fire typing. Also, as is the case with many of the typings on this list, if you add Levitate to a Pokemon with this typing, it might be really difficult to take down. Finally, for the first type combination in the top 3, this is one of the most defensively airtight combinations in the entire game, Ghost and Steel. This combination has a defensive score of 12, tied with the rest of the top 4. It also has 3 incredible immunities in Fighting, Normal, and Poison, which is the maximum amount of immunities any individual type can obtain without aid from abilities. Additionally, the immunity to Fighting removes one of Steel's original major weaknesses and provides an immunity to powerful moves like Fake Out. Add to that, it has resistances to 10 types, and it's yet another type combination where only 6 types can hit it for neutral or super effective damage. As for its weaknesses, Ghost Steel carries 4 2x weaknesses in Fire, Ground, Ghost, and Dark. However, the total resistances and immunity package means that Ghost Steel Pokemon can force switch-ins and wall key threats if built correctly. Not to mention, the only two Pokemon with this type combination are both exceedingly strong. Goldengo and Aegislash. Early in Gen 9, the Golden Inflatable Steel Tube saw a ton of play in VGC and Singles OU. Even now, it sees continued usage as a core defensive Pokemon in OU. Goldengo takes full advantage of this type with a strong special attack stat, a unique move pool, and a signature ability that blocks status and hazard removal via defog. Luckily, it also has access to reliable recovery, meaning its longevity is greatly increased. The defensive typing allows it to pivot in aggressively and rack up pressure without taking too much damage in return. We also have Aegislash. When it was introduced, Aegislash was so good it ended up in Ubers for its first 2 generations. Post-nerf in Gen 8, where it effectively lost 40 stat points, it now remains in OU. However, it was left out of the Gen 9 Pokedex, so it's hard to say if that would change. With its signature ability to stance change, as well as access to moves like Sword Stance and priority moves such as Shadow Sneak, it is almost impossible to play around safely. King Shield also allows it to switch back to its defensive stance at +4 priority, allowing it to attack, shield, attack, while remaining incredibly healthy. Additionally, it can also be built incredibly flexibly, as both offensive and defensive stats are the same 140 in current generations. We're almost at the top, and sitting just below the throne is Flying Steel, a nearly flawless defensive profile that has defined generations of competitive play, particularly in singles. This incredible typing only has 2x weaknesses. Much like Dragon Steel early on this list, only 2x weaknesses allows for greatly increased longevity. The main reason it ranks 7 spots higher on the list is due to the ground immunity and removal of Steel's other main fighting weakness. It also retains a wide swath of resistances and its poison immunity. This typing is rock solid, literally and figuratively. It thrives when backed by Pokemon with solid recovery, strong base defenses, and utility options. Thankfully, the Flying type-in often provides access to moves like Roost, Defog, and even U-Turn, which allows this typing to shine as defensive pivots. There are several notable users of this typing. Celesteela, one of the best defensive offensive hybrids in the game thanks to its ability Beast Boost, is a nightmare to take down. It also has good recovery, great bulk, and access to Leech Seed and Protect to make it super annoying. In Gen 8, Celesteela was a menace with access to both Max Steel Spike and Max Airstream, which could greatly increase its team's speed in battle. This Pokemon is an incredible user of the weakness policy too, especially in formats with Dynamax. Next for this typing we have Skarmory, the defining wall of older generations in singles. It can set entry hazards, can roost, and also Whirlwind, opposing Pokemon trying to set up into all of the entry hazards it set up. It's a pure stall toolkit wrapped in steel feathers. We also have Corviknight, which is Gen 8's Skarmory clone. Corviknight has less pure bulk than Skarmory, but it gets access to a few key moves and increased special bulk that allows it to act as a better pivot Pokemon in singles, with its slightly better offensive pressure. Finally, the top defensive type combination in all of Pokemon, Fairy Steel. The #1 best defensive steel type combination is none other than Fairy Steel. It's a typing so good it's often hailed as the best in all of Pokemon, period. To start, much like a few of the previous combinations, it has only 2x weaknesses, Fire and Ground, both manageable with the right team support. It also gains an immunity to Dragon, one of the strongest offensive types in the game, and it retains a large pool of resistances, including additional resistances to Dark and a removal of the fighting type weakness. Steel also covers Fairy's poison weakness with its immunity. This typing gives you defensive safety, offensive synergy, and a clear path to building durable, versatile Pokemon. Even neutral hits feel weak when this typing is paired with decent bulk. But the real kicker? Nearly every Pokemon with this typing is a threat, and I don't mean that lightly. Starting with Klefki, this Pokemon is more than just a couple keys on a keyring. It's a utility nightmare. Prankster, Thunder Wave, spikes, screens, and access to offensive moves like Foul Play give it incredible usefulness as a bulky support. Its bulk is respectable, and the typing gives the longevity to disrupt entire teams if it's not removed quickly. Next up, we have Mega Mawile. This Pokemon was banned to Ubers in Gen 6, but kept in OU Gen 7. It has an insanely high attack stat with huge power and the typing to take hits while setting up. Additionally, it has access to Fake Out, which deals great chip damage in VGC. Its base form ability to intimidate prior to Mega Evolving is also worth noting. Interestingly enough, I think this actually has the most amount of Pokemon worth mentioning, more so than any other Steel dual type. It may even have more Pokemon in this tier than pure Steel. I don't remember. Anyway, next up we have Magearna. Magearna has legendary stats in a near broken move pool. Its ability to shrug off hits and output offensive pressure through Soul Heart, giving it a special attack boost, is insane. This Pokemon is consistently in Ubers and singles, and unfortunately the mythical rule sets hold it back in VGC formats. If it is ever allowed in more formats freely, I can only imagine it would run wild. After Magearna, we have Zacian, who's Gen 8's incredibly power-creeped legendary dog. In Gen 8, this was simply the best Pokemon in the game. In Gen 9, it's fallen off significantly due to the removal of Dynamax and a major nerf to its abilities and stat totals. During Gen 8, however, it was included on nearly every single VGC team, and every team required an answer to handle it. Lastly, we have Tinkaton. Tinkaton is an extremely balanced Pokemon given its typing. Its measly attack stat suggests its best role is that of a bulky support. However, access to Gigaton Hammer allows it to still output massive amounts of damage in cases where it needs to. With a bevy of support moves in Stealth Rock, Knockoff, Thunder Wave, it can perform its job effectively and currently resides in UU after a brief stint in OU. Fairy Steel doesn't just top this list for its numbers, it translates into real-world viability with multiple Pokemon achieving meta-defining success through generations. Whether you need a wall, pivot, utility core, or an all-out attacker, this typing is the ultimate toolbox. It's not just the best defensive Steel type, it might be the best defensive typing, period. Not just might, it is mathematically. There you have it, every Steel dual type ranked by their defensive potential. Remember though, typing alone doesn't make a Pokemon viable. Stats, move pools, abilities, and synergy all play a huge role. Still, when it comes to reliable team backbones, Steel remains one of the safest bets. Now I want to hear from you. Leave a comment if any of these type combinations surprised you. Also let me know what your favorite Steel type combo is. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the breakdown, leave a like, maybe subscribe if you want to see this video series in its fullest, and thank you so much for watching. Stay sharp, keep those gears turning, and I'll see you all next time.